Police arrived at a house on Elm Street during a storm on the front porch. They found a 19-year-old named Julian, shaking, covered in blood. He kept repeating the same thing: "I had to save her." But when officers went inside, the woman he claimed he was saving said she never asked for help. And when detectives searched the living room, they found the entire floor covered in plastic tarps. No one could explain why they were there. Julian disappeared that night, ran into the storm, and was never seen again. His body was never found, and the question investigators couldn't answer was this: did he try to save someone in danger, or did he fall into something designed for him? I am Rafe Quinn. In 2018, I was asked to review a missing person case from a small town outside Portland. A young man named Julian Marsh had vanished after breaking into his neighbor's house during a storm. He claimed he was trying to rescue a woman he believed was being attacked, but the couple who lived in that house told police Julian had misunderstood what he saw, that he'd seemed confused, frightened, and then he'd run into the storm and disappeared. No body was ever recovered. No charges were filed. Case went cold. But when I examined the file, I found details that didn't fit. Small things that suggested something else might have been happening. Julian Marsh was 19 when he disappeared in October of 2017. Quiet, socially isolated, lived with his mother in a 2-story house on Elm Street. His bedroom was on the 2nd floor, and from his window, he could see directly into the house next door, into the living room. The window was large, and the blinds were never fully closed. The neighbors were Marcus and Clara Bennett, married couple. Early 30s, they'd moved in about 6 months earlier, kept to themselves mostly. But over those months, Julian started noticing something: arguments. Late at night, he'd see them through the window. Marcus shouting, Clara crying near the glass. It happened frequently, weekly, sometimes more. Julian told his mother he was worried about Clara, said he thought Marcus was hurting her. His mother asked if he'd seen actual violence. Julian said no, just arguments, intense ones. His mother suggested calling police if he was concerned. Julian said he didn't have proof, just what he saw through the window. His mother told him not to get involved, said it wasn't his business. But Julian kept watching. Over the next few weeks, Julian noticed patterns. The arguments always happened late at night, always in the same room, always in front of the same window. And what troubled investigators later was this: if the arguments were private, why did they always occur in the most visible room of the house? The Bennetts had other rooms, a bedroom upstairs, a den in the back. But the confrontations always happened in the living room, where Julian could see. And there was something else. The lights in that room were always extremely bright, bright enough to clearly illuminate everything inside. One investigator later described it as theatrical, like the room was lit for viewing. Several neighbors confirmed they'd witnessed arguments too, through the same window, but none had called police. One neighbor said they assumed it was just a loud marriage. Another said they'd thought about reporting it but never did. And Clara had never contacted authorities, never filed a complaint, never asked for help. Julian started keeping a notebook, writing down dates, times, what he saw. The entries were detailed, methodical. The last one was dated the 13th of October, one day before he disappeared. It said, "Another fight." Clara crying, Marcus yelling about her not following the plan. What plan? On the night of the 14th of October, 2017, a severe storm hit. Heavy rain, wind, power flickering. Around 11:30 p.m., Julian looked out his window. The Bennett's living room lights were on, bright as always. And through the rain-streaked glass, he saw something that terrified him. Marcus appeared to be on top of Clara. She appeared to be on the floor, struggling. Julian believed she was being attacked, that she needed help immediately. He grabbed a heavy flashlight, ran downstairs, out into the storm across the yard. The Bennett's back door was glass, locked. Julian didn't knock. He smashed the glass with the flashlight, unlocked it from inside, stepped into the house, dripping wet, ready to intervene. But when he entered the living room, everything was silent. The lights turned on fully. Marcus was sitting calmly in a chair. Clara was sitting on the couch. Neither appeared injured. Neither seemed surprised. They just looked at him. And that is when Julian noticed the floor. The entire living room was covered in plastic tarps, clear plastic sheeting, taped down at the edges, covering the carpet completely. Julian asked if Clara was okay. She said yes, calm, no emotion. Marcus stood up slowly, asked Julian why he'd broken into their house. Julian said he thought Clara was in danger, thought he saw Marcus attacking her. Marcus said that wasn't what happened. Said they'd been moving furniture. Said Julian had misunderstood. Julian looked at Clara again, asked if she needed help. She said no. Said everything was fine. Said Julian should leave. But her tone felt rehearsed, like she was reading lines. Julian backed toward the door, said he was sorry. Marcus said it was a misunderstanding, but he didn't move, just stood there, watching Julian turned and ran. Out the broken door, into the storm, down the street, into the dark. That was the last confirmed sighting of Julian Marsh. His mother called police the next morning when he didn't come home. Officers went to the Bennett house. Marcus and Clara confirmed Julian had broken in, showed them the shattered door, the living room, but the plastic tarps were gone. Floor was clean. Marcus explained they'd been preparing to paint. That is why plastic had been down. They'd cleaned it up after Julian left. Officers asked why Julian thought Clara was in danger. Marcus said they'd been arguing, moving furniture. Julian must have seen them through the window and misinterpreted. Clara confirmed the story, said she'd never been in danger, said Julian seemed confused when he came inside. Then he ran. Paula searched for Julian parks, trails, nearby areas, nothing. No phone activity, no sightings. His mother said this wasn't like him, but there was no evidence of foul play. Just a young man who'd broken into a house and vanished. Detectives interviewed neighbors again, asked about the arguments they'd witnessed. One neighbor said they'd seen another argument just 2 nights before Julian disappeared. Same window, same intensity. But when police asked Clara, she said there hadn't been any argument that week, said things had been calm. The neighbor insisted they'd seen it, but Clara said it hadn't happened. Paula showed the Bennetts Julian's notebook, asked what he might have meant by the plan. Marcus said he had no idea, said they'd never discussed any plan, said Julian must have been imagining things. Clara agreed, said Julian seemed troubled, maybe obsessed. But here is what troubled investigators. If the arguments were real, why hadn't Clara ever sought help? And if they weren't real, why were they happening at all? Why perform conflict in front of a window one? Detective noticed something when he returned to the Bennett house. The living room smelled like bleach, strong, fresh. Marcus said they'd been cleaning, getting ready to paint, but the detective said it smelled like more than cleaning, like something had been scrubbed, erased. But without evidence of a crime, there was nothing to pursue. There was another detail. A neighbor 3 houses down reported seeing a large vehicle in the Bennett driveway around 2 a.m. the night Julian disappeared. Dark van or truck backed up to the garage, headlights off. The neighbor didn't report it until days later. By then, the Bennetts said they hadn't had any vehicles there that night, said the neighbor must have been mistaken. 6 weeks after Julian disappeared, the Bennetts put their house up for sale. Said they didn't feel comfortable there anymore. Too much attention, they moved to a different state. Investigators had no grounds to stop them. No evidence, just a broken door and a missing young man. Julian's case remained open. His mother never stopped looking, but no trace of him was ever found. No remains, no belongings, nothing. He simply ceased to exist after running into that storm. I spoke to one of the investigators years later. He said something still bothered him. He said the arguments Julian witnessed always happened in the same room, always visible through the same window, always with bright lights, like they were meant to be seen, but he couldn't prove it. And without Julian, there was no case. There is one more detail. 6 months after the Bennetts moved, a new family bought Julian's old house. They had a teenage son. He took the same bedroom, the one facing the house next door. Different family lived there now. No connection to the Bennetts. But one night during a storm, the son looked out his window, and through the neighbor's blinds, he saw a man and woman arguing. Same window, same bright lights, same visibility. He told his parents. They said it wasn't his business, told him not to watch. He didn't intervene, and nothing happened. The investigation into Julian Marsh's disappearance went cold. No body, no evidence, no suspects. Just a young man who thought he saw someone in danger and acted on instinct, and then vanished. I don't know what happened to Julian. The evidence doesn't prove anything, but the details don't dismiss it either. The arguments that were always visible, the plastic tarps, the bleach smell, the vehicle at 2 a.m., all of it sits in the file, unexplained. Human instinct tells us to protect people in danger, to intervene when we see someone suffering. It is a good instinct, but sometimes that instinct can be misunderstood, and sometimes it can be exploited. If someone wanted to lure a certain type of person into a situation, creating the appearance of danger might work, especially if the person watching is young, isolated, wants to help. I don't have proof, but the possibility exists. And that is what makes this case disturbing, because it suggests the impulse to save someone could be turned into a trap. And if that is true, Julian didn't disappear because he made a mistake. He disappeared because he did what any decent person would do. Julian Marsh has been missing since the 14th of October, 2017. No body recovered. No charges filed. Marcus and Clara Bennett were never named as suspects. They moved away, and somewhere, a young man who thought he was saving someone is gone. But here is what I keep thinking about, that window. The one Julian watched through for months. The blinds that were never fully closed. Always open, just enough to see inside. Just enough to watch. And I wonder if what Julian saw through that window was exactly what someone wanted him to see. If every argument, every cry, every moment of visible distress was designed to pull him closer. Until one night during a storm, he finally did what they'd been waiting for. He tried to help, and the blinds on that window were never fully closed. Just open enough for someone watching across the street to see exactly what was happening inside. This is Midnight Ledger, where some cases make you question whether doing the right thing can be exactly what someone is counting on.